Hi everyone. I won't be able to do any grading or emailing on Monday, so I'm sending out reminders today, and I'll email you again if I have specific feedbacks from last week's assignments. So for this week, will be the week of September 24th. We'll cover independent groups, which is where we're going to come back to concepts like independent and dependent variables that we covered in the first week of class. Be sure to look back at your assignments from those first few weeks if you need a review of some of these concepts. You can also rewatch the experimental design video from week 3, which I've also posted here, and that's another good review. You have 2 assignments for this chapter. We'll come back to the final project, but the first is to read the Schellenberg article and then answer the corresponding questions that go with it. And the second is the independent groups assignments. Both of these assignments will really serve to make absolutely sure that you understand these constructs and these ideas, because the next few chapters will depend on the understanding. And then, of course, finally, we'll have a test. But the other big thing that you have this week, so you've got quite a bit this week, so be sure to plan ahead. You have another step in your final project planning. By this point, you should know what you're studying. You should have reviewed the literature because you submitted your research reports. And you should have a pretty good idea of what you want to study. Similar to your other topic worksheet, you'll need to open this Word document that's right here and then save it and submit it as an assignment. So the Word document looks like this. So first, some of this is a repeat from your topic assignment. So first, you're going to need to, again, identify what your main topic is and discuss why it's relevant and important. Second, you need to identify your constructs. If you haven't changed anything, this is the same constructs you listed in the planning stage. So this is just kind of making sure that I have the most updated information. Third, you need to identify how your constructs are operationally defined. So this means you need to figure out how you will measure or assess each of the 2 variables you're studying. You might be using self-report surveys or have someone else report on the behavior or do observations, or maybe you're planning to manipulate the construct in some way in an experiment. Either way, you need to clearly operationally define the 2 constructs you said you were assessing. For question 4 here, you need to identify whether you're proposing a correlational study where you're measuring 2 variables without changing them, you're just assessing the relationship between them, or if you're measuring an experiment, or you're doing an experimental study in which you're manipulating one variable and testing how it affects the other. If it's a correlational study, you need to explain how you'll know if there's a relationship between your variables. So this is basically your methods. If it's an experiment, you need to identify what the independent and dependent variables are. You also need to identify whether the independent variable is independent groups, which means you have different people at each level of your independent variable, or if it's repeated measures, meaning every participant does each level of the independent variable. And explain why you think it's independent groups or repeated measures. You might, if you're not sure, you might want to look ahead to chapter 7, especially if you think you have a repeated measures design, because that covers it specifically. Independent groups will cover in the chapter we're covering this week. Question 5 is basically a short summary of your research reports. So you don't need to find new studies for this. This is just an even briefer summary or more condensed summary of the 2 articles you read. For question 6, you need to specify what your hypothesis is. So remember, going back to, I think it was chapter 2, you need to list a specific prediction which states the direction of the relationship that you expect. And also explain why evidence supporting your ideas would be interesting. So why do we want to find this, or why would we expect to find this? Why is it interesting? And then finally, for the last question, you're going to provide a general overview of the procedure. This is really a summary of that you'll expand on for the method section when you go to write it. So as you can see, by the end of this worksheet, you should have a clear idea of what type of study you're planning to write up and how you will do it. Remember, you don't actually need to complete the study, but you do need to you will need to, by the end of this project, write up a full manuscript, introduction, method, results, and discussion sections, as if you've conducted the study. So you're not actually collecting data, but you're acting as if you have. So as usual, let me know if you have questions, and I hope you have a great week.